I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru, and this all-in-one is the MSI Gaming 246QE. The 6 there stands for Intel 6th Gen, i.e. Skylake. I'm just going to get Metro 2033 Redux running. This is on full HD with high image settings. Right, that's now running, and we'll turn it around so you can have a little look. And there we go. Right, to give the rundown on this, so 24-inch screen as said, it's an IPS panel, full HD, so 1920 by 1080p. The processor in it is a Skylake Core i7, that's a Core i7 6700HQ, and the graphics are GTX 960M 4GB. So we're talking laptop hardware, and on Kit Guru I've put some photos up where I've actually opened it up. I can't do it here, it's a bit awkward, you have to kind of do it like a clamshell to get inside the thing, so it's off with this stand here, take off the back cover and then undo a few screws and kind of way. Inside you'll see that essentially it's a halfway house with a PC and a laptop. So what they've basically done is there's a heat pipe cooler going to the chipset, and then a blower fan that blows out the sides, actually this corner down here. So the heat blows to the rear. It is not massively noisy, but it is clearly audible. On the other hand, I'm sat currently behind the thing. When you're at the front, the noise is definitely reduced. There are various SKUs, stock keeping units from MSI of this model worldwide. So you can either have this stand as we do in the UK, or elsewhere in the world there's a kind of kickstand, so this bottom bezel sits on the desk, so which means the whole thing sits a bit lower. Also MSI does a mouse and a keyboard that matches the styling, which would have been nice to see, but there we go. I don't think the mouse and keyboard were anything massively exciting, but they look the part. Visually not a bad thing, but we didn't get that, so what the hey. Speakers are in the bottom corners as you'd expect, and having been inside, they can tell you they're sort of little plastic box about that size stuck with a bit of tape. They do a decent job, however. Other bits of hardware inside the thing, again photos on Kit Guru. So there's a 128GB Transcend M.2 SSD. There's a sort of an access hatch once you're inside the back cover. It's not easy to get to. You have to pull a few things apart, and that gives you access to the second M.2 slot, so you could, if you choose, install a second SSD and or go to RAID. Again, my feeling there is that's because MSI does different variants of this all-in-one in different markets. I very much doubt anyone's going to add an M.2 SSD to this. Also, there's 8GB DDR4 2133MHz memory in a single module on the board. When you're inside the thing, you can't actually see the memory. That's because you're looking at the back of the motherboard when you get the covers off. The processor, graphics chip and memory remain out of sight, but on the back of the motherboard is the expansion slot for a second module of memory, so you could easily relatively easily upgrade the memory. As I say, you're going to have to pull the cover off. It's not like open a hatch, there you are. You have to go a bit further inside than that. And that's pretty much it in terms of upgradability. In addition to that 128GB SSD, there's also a 1TB hard drive from Hitachi. It's 700 RPM, so it's a regular laptop hard drive. And that's the end of the benchmark. Now, this pulls along quite reasonably. 3D Mark scores are absolutely fine. Tomb Raider, Thief on high or ultimate presets, depending on which game we're talking about. It was running at mid-30s frames per second, which is absolutely fine. As you've just seen there, Metro 2033 runs correctly, but GTA 5 for some reason didn't want to play with this MSI. I have no explanation. I've asked MSI about it. At the moment, we hope it's just a driver kind of thing, something to do with some revision to GTX 960M or some such. But games play absolutely fine. 3D Mark behaves, benchmarks fine. GTA 5 was the one I had a problem with, which is of course not to say there aren't other games out there that currently have problems. One has to hope if it is a driver problem, it'll be fixed. But as things stand, don't understand it. Anyway, Metro Redux, fine, no problem at all. Now, GTX 960M is not a great gaming graphics chip. For a laptop, it's absolutely fine, as we know. For gaming, you really want GTX 970M as a starting point, but you have to assume it's partly cost and partly to do with heat. If MSI had made the whole chassis a bit deeper, gone a bit over the top on the cooling package, they could have easily cooled 970M. They've chosen to go the way they have. My guess is that cost is at least as big a part. Now, the pricing of this is interesting. In the UK, it's a few pence under £1,200, including VAT, 11.99 plus pence. The reason that's interesting is because this is called MSI Gaming, and yet you could argue GTX 960M isn't really gaming. It's sort of gaming. It's not gaming. And the obvious comparison is between this and iMac. Now, in terms of the thinness of the thing, it's thin. It's no problem. It's not super duper thin. On the other hand, the bezel is not exactly svelte, is it? I mean, there's a heck of a lot of bezel compared to the panel. I mean, look at it all the way around. Webcam in the top with space to spare. So it's not a completely subtle piece of engineering and design management, but design capability. But the funny thing is that Apple doesn't have an iMac that bats in this precise territory. They've got the tiny 21.5 inch, they've got the big 27 inch, and of course they're sort of going for full sort of spec panels. What are they up to now? 5K, I believe, on the big one, and 4K on the smaller. So you're talking Retina display and either smaller or larger, which actually leaves quite a large gap in the middle for a 24 inch all-in-one that isn't an iMac, and also that can play games. Of course, the Apple, they're relying on much weedier graphics. The small one is Intel. I can't remember if the big one's integrated AMD or if that's also Intel. But this, relatively speaking, compared to iMac, has a lot going for it. It's got a regular laptop Core i7 processor. It's got proper graphics in the context of all-in-ones, compared to a gaming laptop, on the other hand, not so hot. So it's in a slightly peculiar territory. It does, however, do that certain job. Were you to spec up the same sort of hardware in a tower case, it would be about, I reckon, £800. And that means that you're paying a fair amount for the privilege of the portability and the convenience and the styling of the gaming. Now, in terms of the styling, it's all right. I mean, it's tidy enough. It's not shrunk wrap and beautiful, but it works and it's all right. You can certainly move from room to room quite easily. Literally, off you go with the thing. But I wonder how many people are going to do that. Now, the obvious thing is it's that kind of student bedroom thing. You put it on their desk, you save a load of space. You haven't got to, house a tower. Job done. In that respect, quite a lot going for it. Whether you want to have the ability to play games and pay for privilege, that's different. Assuming, of course, not paying for their own computer. That remains to be seen. Now, in terms of ports and connectors, we've got optical drive, slimline on the side here, and we've got a bunch of control buttons down the side and also USB ports there. Along the bottom, we've got a few more USB ports and the power connection for this 220 watt power brick and a few other bits and pieces. They're not really all that accessible. Photos on Kicker, I won't turn it around because it will shine like Billy under the lights. But getting cables, Ethernet cable or graphics or whatever underneath here is not that straightforward. You definitely have to fiddle. I've got the two USB dongles for mouse and keyboard plugged in there, and it's a lot more awkward than you'd think because of course it's hidden behind the stand. It curves around. It's not a major complaint, I can't say that, but if you're going for ease and convenience, you can move the thing from room to room like so. Not quite so straightforward if you've got to then hunt around to plug in a HDMI or a Ethernet or some such. Having said that, it does have Intel 802.11ac Wi-Fi plus Bluetooth 4.2, so you don't need to use an Ethernet cable. Wireless works perfectly well. Nonetheless, you are bound to want to plug in a mouse and keyboard. On the other hand, if you're using Wi-Fi adapters, they can plug in and remain plugged, and that's all good. So, it's a bit of a curiosity, is this Gaming 24. It's using the latest Skylake processor, that's a good thing. GTX 960M, not our favourite graphics chipset. 970M if you wouldn't mind. The pricing, on the other hand, is a little bit steep. You always pay for the convenience of all-in-ones and small form factors. Were it to have 970M, that obviously hurt the pricing, so sort of fair enough. Looks and the feel, it looks good. I mean, the quality of the panel looks good. The styling is okay. I mean, it's not wonderful, but it's perfectly okay. In terms of the depth of the thing and the cooling and so on, that's all okay. It's not ultra sophisticated engineering, but it does that job. So overall, it's a hit, a warm hit rather than a hot hit. But yeah, it's there. It's okay. So I'm Lil Woodard for Kit Guru. This is the MSI Gaming 24 6QE.